Alright, The Division 2. It's been announced. Game's coming. We're gonna see first footage at E3 this year. But what is it that we actually want to see from this game? What is it that we want to see for The Division 2? Well, for me personally, there are a lot of things that I would want for The Division 2. But out of everything, the thing that I want the most is that I want to be surprised. I think it's very easy to look at The Division 1 and point out everything that's wrong with it and say, that is it. That is what they have to fix, and then the sequel is going to be great. It's that one thing or those two things. And we could be talking about anything. We could be talking about gear balance, that it has to be separate, separate for PC and separate on console. It could be talking about the netcode and the lag. It could be talking about skills and talents that are just not good, if they could rework those or replace with entirely new skills. It could be certain weapons that have to be in the game or weapons that are currently underpowered or overpowered. It could be the bugs that the Division still has. We could be talking about anti-cheat. We could be talking about the bad inventory UI. We could be talking about the teleporting NPCs, and we can just keep going and going and going. And with all these things, we could say, yeah, that's the thing. If they fix that for the Division 2, the game's gonna be great. But I don't know, I don't know. Maybe the developers do all those things. So maybe the developers drop a whole bunch of stuff on top of that. Maybe they, find a new way to calculate the toughness or a new way to calculate the firearms or come up with entirely new systems that, of course, we can't know about because we haven't seen anything. The developers could do all those things, and that could be a very good thing for the sequel. But that still wouldn't really surprise me. It still wouldn't really blow me away. I would be like, yeah, that's good. We're going to get a good game, a polished game, something that a lot of people are going to enjoy. But it definitely wouldn't blow me away. So then, what is it that I'm looking for? Would it be the Battle Royale mode that everybody's been talking about? Nah, not really. I mean, honestly, I'm sort of expecting there to be a Battle Royale mode. Looking at Fortnite's and PUBG's recent success, Ubisoft would be kind of blind not to add some sort of Battle Royale mode that's maybe free to play to the Division 2. That's going to be a guaranteed success. They're going to make a ton of money with that. Although for me personally, I wouldn't be, too overly enthusiastic about it. It would be cool, but nothing that would literally blow me away. It wouldn't make or break the game for me. Would a better story mode surprise me? Would that be the thing that I'm looking for? No, not really. A cool story is good, but I'm gonna be done with the story pretty fast. And no matter how good the story is, after playing it once or twice, that's kind of the whole experience. That's not gonna be the thing that's gonna keep me playing. Again, it would be a very cool thing for a lot of people. It would definitely push the reviews of this game up because almost every review outlet just plays the game for 10 hours and then, slaps a number on top of it. And if the storyline's good, well, then, hey, you have a good game, pretty much. But yeah, storyline wouldn't be a thing that keeps me playing either. So what does the Division 2 need to do for me to really make an impact? Well, that's the thing I want to kind of talk about today. I want to put all the things that I just mentioned aside. In the name of high hopes or in the name of fate, let's just assume that the Division 2, when it comes out, it's not going to have any issues. It's going to have all the things that I previously mentioned, proper anti-cheat, proper balancing, no lag and that kind of stuff. And it's going to have all the additional game modes that players could possibly want. It's going to have a very good story, a fleshed out Battle Royale mode. It's going to have PvP, 4v4 skirmish right from the get-go, all those things. If it would have all those things, if it would be perfectly balanced, if it would be free of lag and bugs and that kind of stuff, if it would have those game modes, would that make the Division 2 the perfect game for a lot of people? Would that be the final experience, the thing that everybody would pretty much want, and then that's it? Maybe for, some people, but for me, no. I think that if we had that, there would still be a lot of things that we could do to improve the experience that the Division is, and that's kind of what I wanted to talk about, the directions that I hope the Division 2 takes and goes, so to speak. To make some changes to maybe the core of how the game works. So I've got 4 topics that I kind of want to go over, I guess, that I would like to see for the Division 2 on top of, what I just talked about. And these 4 topics, they're kind of broad. The first one is going to be PvE, and then I want to talk a bit about PvP. Then I want to talk a little bit about skills and talents, and then I want to talk about the gear a bit, which, if you put all those things together, PvE, PvP, talents, skills, gear sets. It's pretty much the entire game. But hey, I've tried to write the script for this video for about 5 times now and had to scrap it each time because it was too unorganized. So if at any point this video comes across as just that, unorganized, well then you're not wrong. You're probably right, but this is the best that I could do because it's been pretty difficult making a wish list or things that I want to see for the Division 2 type of video because there's so much that I want to see. There's so much that I hope to see, but at the same time, so much of what I'm hoping for, so much of what I want to see, I'm going to take it for granted at this point. Like, if it doesn't have as many features, we're going to repeat the same cycle. So all those things, I didn't want to put those on the wish list because I don't think they deserve to be on the wish list. I think they have to be in there no matter what. It's not something, I'm not going to put anti-cheat on the wish list when that has to be like a given right from the get-go. That's kind of my point here. But yeah. Let's begin with the first thing that I have on my list, which is, we're going to talk a bit about the PvE side of things. Now, I hope that for the Division 2, the developers can find ways to make the game more difficult other than just increasing the NPC health pools and upping their damage output. I know that the Division 1 and the Division 2, they're RPG games. And I know that DPS and toughness and health bars and skill power and all those things, it's all part of the RPG aspect of this game. And, with RPG games, you have tanks. You have tanky NPCs that can take a lot of damage before they die. Because if everything was a 1 or 2 shot or an instant kill on the head, then having a high DPS wouldn't really matter as much, right? Because everything dies really fast anyway. So yeah, this game is bound to have tanky NPCs, bullet sponges, so to speak. And I'm not saying that the developers should take that away completely. But the thing is, I don't think that when we're at the end game, literally every NPC should take half a magazine to kill. That stuff, it just gets old. And a lot of people, they're not willing to accept that they have to shoot bullet sponges when they're fighting humans, so to speak, because we're not fighting aliens. We've had this conversation time and time and time again. We're not fighting guys with a lot of armor. I mean, we're fighting guys with a lot of armor bars, but, visually, it's just humans that we're shooting, and very tanky humans is just not something that a lot of people want to see, especially not when every NPC is that tanky. Now, the Division 1.4 did a lot of good things for the Division 1 to fix the very tankiness of the NPCs, but I still think that NPCs are too tanky in the Division right now. I still think that the difficulty of this game relies too much on giving the NPCs more health and more damage, especially once you get into group play. Now, what I would like to see is the developers getting more creative with what the enemies can do, even break reality a little bit here and there, if the developers feel like they have to then give us a challenge in dealing with more complicated NPCs other than just a wall that walks up to you and that does a shit ton of damage. Now, of course, having the regular trash mobs here and there that have the usual behavior, that's completely fine. We need them. We need to have some stuff to shoot down, especially in a looter shooter. And having the occasional tank as a boss or as like a heavy armored NPC, that's fine. The heavies that we have in the game right now, I'm completely fine with those. Keep them. But aside from that, I also think we need some more variety with NPCs that are not necessarily tanky, but do a lot of weird shit that the player has to really adapt to in order to beat, other than just having a super high DPS or that kind of stuff. Hunters are the easy example that everybody's going to think of when I talk about these things. These NPCs, they actually use cover in a smarter way. They can heal themselves up. They have some skills. They have some turrets. They can one-hit melee you if you get too close. But I'm also thinking about completely new NPCs with like some really weird abilities. For example, an NPC that can cloak himself. How would that make sense in the Tom Clancy environment? Well, easy, the Division agents, they have these contact lenses. That's how they see the map in game. That's how they see the UI. What if somehow, some way, the other NPCs, they, I don't know, found a way to hack into those contact lenses and make themselves now invisible to the player until you shoot them, or until they shoot you back, or until whatever, It allows these NPCs to become invisible temporarily, which makes them a lot more difficult to deal with in a lot of ways, if you if you code it properly. Or you can have NPCs that, I don't know, just hack the islands in a different way, that creates fake versions of themselves. So you kind of have these holograms that you have to shoot. That could be something that could be really confusing for the players. I'm just, grabbing some ideas out of thin air right now. Maybe you have some NPCs that require you to hit specific weak points before you can actually kill them. Like, I kind of like the final boss on the Times Square Legendary mode. Those kind of things, those kind of NPCs, it would be really cool to have more of those, to have NPCs that can do all type of stuff and that have to be taken out in a specific way, other than just, stacking as much enemy armor damage and damage to elites as possible and then just unleashing a whole magazine on top of somebody's head. For missions, for the special missions, the storyline missions and that kind of stuff, it would also be kind of cool to have more special NPC encounters that are specifically tied to those missions. Like, for example, the helicopter in General Assembly. More boss fights that require a little bit of puzzling or maybe some new mechanics here and there just to spice it up a little bit more. I know that you probably can't do this too much for the storyline missions because to get really complicated mechanics, players are going to be required to play in a group in order to, really play something complicated. And you want everybody to complete the storyline. You want everybody to be able to solo the storyline. And if the average potato can't complete the mission within 3 tries, then you'll have a lot of people complaining about that. So I understand that for the normal storyline missions, you probably don't want to do this too much. But for the incursions or for the end game content, which I'm totally expecting there to be actual end game content this time from the get-go, it would be really cool to see a lot more complicated mechanics in order to take bosses down that require specific ways to take them down. I want to see a lot more of Stolen Signal and a lot less of Falcon Lost, so to speak. Because, I think that Stolen Signal was actually a pretty good incursion. I actually liked it a lot. It's not perfect. It has some bugs, and NPCs right there are still way too tanky. That's again what I'm saying. Like, even after 1.4, NPCs still have too much health and too much damage. But if you take the mechanics from Stolen Signal and, maybe reduce the NPC health and that kind of stuff, that could have been a really cool incursion type of thing for The Division 2. Introducing more complicated mechanics and missions, that also allows you to reduce the damage output and the health pools of the mobs without making the content too easy. These things kind of go hand in hand. Obviously, with The Division 1, if you would make the NPCs even squishier and do even less damage, then all the missions are going to be super, super easy to beat. But you replace the health pools and you replace the damage output with either sheer numbers, so you just add a lot more NPCs to the same room, or you introduce some more complicated mechanics. That's pretty much what I would like to see for the PvE of The Division 2. So, we've had that, and now let's talk about PvP a bit. And I think that what we need for PvP is fairly obvious to a lot of people. I think we need to get rid of this dancing in circles style of PvP, the chicken dance or whatever you want to call it, that Division 1 has had since the start, because it's PvP, and some people enjoy it, but it's very bad PvP if we're being honest about it. I want to see some more use of cover, maybe in PvP. I know it's a long shot, but I want cover to be a bit more useful. Now, I'm not saying that cover in the Division 1 in the PvP is useless, because in fact, I myself, if I'm playing PvP, I use cover pretty much all the time. Not the actual cover system that, requires you to press space or press X or A to just duck into cover, because that locks you into one position too much. But I do stick to walls, and I do stand behind cars as I'm shooting other targets to break line of sight or to make my hitbox a little bit smaller when I'm shooting at somebody. Those things help, so it's not like cover is completely useless. But once you get into group play and once you get into fighting a lot of players at the same time, what ends up happening is that everybody ends up just running around in circles, just popping heals, trying to survive, and then maybe take one down here and there, that kind of stuff. And I think that we really want to get away from that. Now, I've done some thinking, and I think I know what the cause is behind this running around in circles, and it's not hip fire, or it's not the movement speed of the characters or that kind of stuff. I don't think we need to look at any of that. I think the main reason is because damage at range is useless most of the time. You can't kill somebody at range. I mean, you can, but most of the time you can't. And this is not only because players are always able to heal up without any punishment at all, but also because if you happen to down somebody at a fairly long range, it's still really difficult to actually finish someone and confirm the kill right away without someone else reviving the player. If they go down and they happen to be behind a piece of cover, you basically can't kill them. You have to walk all the way over to them to then finish them off. Basically, in a Division 1, combat at range is nothing more than tickling each other. Trading a few cooldowns, dropping a few magazines into each other because, we have enough ammo anyway. And if you really want to make something happen, if you really want to get in there and get some kills, you just need to get close. You need to get up close in someone's face, close enough to the point where they can't hide from you, to where they can't run away and that kind of stuff. And when you're that close up in someone's face, the cover system isn't really going to help you out because one is trying to get away from you and the other one's trying to chase. Now, if this is just a fight between two people, this might not look too weird, but you add 8, 12 people to that, everybody's running away from somebody, and everybody is chasing somebody, you end up with the typical chicken dance that you always end up seeing in PvP. So yeah, I think that's pretty much the problem. So what is the solution? Well, I think the solution is pretty straightforward, and that is to make combat at range useful. Now, of course, how do we make combat at range useful? Well, by making the damage that you can do at range lasting. Make it harder to shrug off the damage with a heal or so. How do we do that? Well, I think by reducing the amount of burst healing that players have available to them through medkits or even through skills. I think it would be a really good thing for the Division 2 if it didn't have as much burst healing while taking damage. It doesn't mean that I would like to see healers removed or skill builds removed or medkits removed or any of that stuff. That's not the direction I want to go at all. But I think that a lot of the healing in the game should come in the form of healing over time, so that you press a button and then nothing happens instantly, but then after a second you start slowly healing up. And that healing over time, that can either get reduced or removed when you take damage, or it could get stronger when not taking damage. So either way, if you manage to not take damage, the healing gets stronger and stronger. This way, if you, for example, drop somebody to 30% HP from across the street, they can't just, press one button quickly, go back to full overheal, and then keep running up to you to finish you off. They can't just receive heal after heal after heal from teammates, just dancing in circles until they're so sure that they won't die that they can finally ADS at you. They can't just do that. They will get shot at, they will get dropped to 30% health, and instead of just running to the left and the right and just waiting for their cooldowns, the only option is to break line of sight, because yes, you might still be able to run to the left and the right in the Division 2, but if you can't heal up as sufficiently, then going behind cover is always going to be the better option. Because if the damage is lasting, then why are you running from the left to the right? It's not going to save you, right? And on top of that, players will also not be able to just get in your face as easily if you're maybe, holding your angle on a street corner. They can't just run in there, get a heal, drop down to 10% health, get another heal, drop down to 10% health, get another heal, and then just go up in your face and just burst you down from 150% to 0%. That's not something that they can do. If you can actually put enough damage on them from a range to put them to 10%, they're going to be forced behind cover if they want to heal up. And that could also be your chance to then push up on them. That's kind of how that works. That's maybe how we can make the cover game a little bit more useful in PvP. I'm sure there are other solutions, but I think that the burst healing is really the root of the problem. It's so deeply embedded into the Division 1 with like the medkits that everybody has, even though you have no healing capabilities at all, or the first aids or the station blowups. We're never going to get rid of it in the Division 1, but maybe with the Division 2, there's the opportunity there. So yeah, what do we have on the list now? We have more interesting NPCs and PvE encounters. We have more strategic and less face-tanking PvP. Now, I'm not saying that this is going to make the game perfect, but it definitely seems like something that's better than the Division 1, something that we could really build upon, right? At least, I hope so. I think so. That's the whole point of this video. So from here on out, I want to look at 2 more things that the players will be playing around with in the Division 2. If, of course, the Division 2 is anything like the Division 1 with skills, talents, and gear. I mean, we haven't seen anything about the game yet. For all we know, it's like a racing game right now. They just completely made a 180. But I'm assuming that the Division 2 is going to be pretty similar to the Division 1, and that it's going to have skills and talents and that kind of stuff. And just in case it has, I want to talk about that a little bit now. I want to talk about the actual gameplay, the progression system, and that kind of stuff. So yeah, aside from just having less burst healing, there are also some other things that I want to talk about related to the skills, because there are some things about the skills in the Division 1 that I don't particularly like, and that's the fact that so many of the skills are either AI based or pretty much a click and forget type of thing. Take the auto turret or the seeker mine, for example. You click on the button, it drops down this automated thing for you, and the rest is just done for you. Those are the easiest examples, but even skills like the smart cover, the pulse, the support station to some degree as well. These might not be AI controlled, but in terms of gameplay, it's nothing more than simply pressing a button and that's it, pressing a button and staying in the radius or something. The skills in the Division, they have some stuff to them, but they're definitely not rocket science. And with how much you can actually build your character into these skills, I really wish there would be a little more to them than just a click and forget. And for the Division 2, I'd like to see this happen with the skills. Because, everyone always says that running with a shock turret, it's kind of cheesy. But why? Why is the shock turret cheesy? I don't think that the shock effect in itself is cheesy. I mean, every RPG-like game has stun effects and slow effects and that kind of stuff. And I guess that is essentially what the shock turret is. But I think that in the Division especially, using skill builds, using shock turrets and that kind of stuff, I think it is considered cheesy because so much of those skills are completely automated by the AI. For example, the shock turret, it dishes out the shock effect, it's a stun. But what people hate about it is that it always hits. It does not require the user of that skill to do anything more than pressing a button. There's zero skill to it, so to speak, and I think that frustrates a lot of people. If you were to replace the turret by a throwing knife, maybe, that shocks the enemy if you hit him, like you hit him with the knife and it gives out this shock effect for like a second, just as long as the auto turret. If that would be the skill, then I don't think that people would call it cheesy, because then the user of the skill would have to be good enough with the knife to actually hit somebody with it. He has to throw it at him and then know the distance and know how fast the knife travels if the guy is running from the left to the right. It's going to be a difficult thing to hit. And if you actually hit somebody, instead of somebody saying, cheesy shock turret got me again with that 100% accuracy, they might now say, wow, what a nice shock knife. He really got me there. I mean, that's not how online gaming works. You'll never hear a guy say that. We all know what they're really going to say. But it would at least be less cheesy, or at least considered to be less cheesy by a lot of people. The same kind of goes for the ultimate abilities. The recovery link, it does require some timing if you want to revive your teammates fast enough, but usually it's not rocket science either. And the blue and the tech link, okay, sure, some timing with these is also nice to have, but it's also very much a press this button and now you're going to do more damage and get more damage resilience type of thing. It doesn't really have much depth to it. It doesn't really... I don't know. It's just that, It's just like, they tech-linked me. What a noob. That's the kind of response that you're going to get from people. I really want to see this change with the Division 2. I want to see more depth to the skills. I want to see bigger rewards for players who can properly use the skills. And I want to see punishment for those that do not know how to use the skills. The tech link could be transformed into something like striker stacks. Like you activate the ult and you only start gaining damage when you actually hit shots from that moment on. And it also removes the stacks when you miss shots. This way, anybody can pop a tech link. But if you want to get a lot of damage with a tech link, then you're going to have to hit a lot of shots first, It's still an ultimate ability. It could still be a very powerful thing, and a good skill player could get a lot of value out of this, but it wouldn't just be a press and forget button, so to speak. Same could be said about the blue link. This could act like the Nomad gear set. If you activate your blue, it does nothing. You're not going to get any damage resilience. Until the moment somebody in your team drops to 0 health. At that point, that person gets a free health bar and gets the damage resilience for 10 seconds. In this way, if you time the blue right, you could save somebody's life. You could prevent him from dying and make him tankier for those 10 seconds. But if you just pop a blue at the start of a fight and just, press and forget about it, then it's not going to do anything for you. I think that's doing little things like this. It adds counterplay. You can use it just before somebody dies to get maximum value. But if the enemies notice quick enough, they could stop shooting and then the blue did nothing for you. Well, not nothing because, the enemy still had to stop shooting. So that means they're not doing damage and that kind of stuff. But it adds skill to the game. It adds more dynamic gameplay than just, he popped a blue. Let me pop a blue real quick as well. Otherwise I'm dead, that kind of stuff. It removes those players that just pop rainbow ults at the start of a fight to gain ridiculous stat bonuses and basically changes those ults into game-changing abilities, but only in the right hands, so to speak. Now, these examples that I've just presented, they're obviously not going to work in an environment that is the Division 1. I'm just trying to give some examples of what I would like to see in the Division 2. I'm sure the developers could come up with way better things for the Division 2. And maybe, we don't even have a tech link there. I'm sure we have other ultimate abilities. I'm just giving examples of what I would like to see in these ultimate abilities. Just very rough examples that in the current environment of the Division 1, they probably wouldn't work. They probably would be too weak or too strong. These are just some concrete examples of what I want to see. So more depth to the skill system and the playstyle of the skills. That's basically what I'm trying to say. So yeah, that's 3 out of 4 things that I talked about. And the last thing is not going to take too much time, but it's still something that I think is very important. And that's that for the Division 2, I'd like to see gear make more meaningful changes to the way that you play the game. Let me explain what I mean by this a little bit, because in a Division 1 we have many different builds. We have so many different builds. Actually, we only have 3, Nomad, Striker, and Predator. But no. We have many different builds. Which all these builds sort of have their own playstyle. They don't differ too much from each other, but they have their own thing, But most of these gear sets, they kinda are nothing more than just a big stat increase. If we, for example, look at Hunter's Fate, that's just more damage. You get more damage by landing shots. Same with Striker. We have Tactician, which is more skill power. We have Reclaimer, which is a stronger station. We have Firecrest, which is a stronger fire turret. We have Deadeye, which is more critical hit damage on snipers. All of these gear sets, they're basically nothing more than big stat increases in one area or the other. And sure, there are some gear sets that do a little bit more than that, like for example Alpha Bridge, D3, or Final Measure. They get a little more creative. Alpha Bridge, you get an ult, you get extra talent, you can build your character in different ways, and then Final Measure and D3 add a whole lot of utility that you can't find anywhere else. That's pretty cool, but aside from those things, the gear sets, they don't really make your build or your character special. They don't really allow you to do things that are otherwise just completely unheard of. I'm going to take The Witcher 3 as an example here, which is just something that I've recently played, so it's an easy example for me to take. But the whole game, you have these 5 signs that you can use. You have fire, you have, you can push people away, you can stun people. There are basically 5 things that you can do. Now, you can build these things in different ways. You can upgrade your fire ability, you can upgrade your pushing ability, and that's kind of like, building your gear set in a division. And then you're really good at one thing, or the other thing. You're really good with the fire turret or with the reclaimer station or with skill power. That's kind of what that is. But then what The Witcher 3 does at the end is it completely changes what these skills and what these abilities can do. For example, the pushing ability, you can change it into a freezing ability that now not only pushes people away, but also freezes people. You're like this ice mage all of a sudden. And before that, before the end game, this was completely unheard of. You would never be able to do that. That is something that I want to see for the Division more. Like, you get to the end game, and suddenly this gear set allows you to change this skill completely, how it works fundamentally. Completely throw the player off guard with what you're able to do. Doesn't have to be game breaking, but make it something special, something so unique that the player is just surprised by. Like, what is this? A couple of concrete examples. What if you had a specific gear set that made the player invisible when using the Conceal Pulse? What if you had a specific gear set that turned the Seeker Mine into the flying drone that we saw in the 2014 gameplay trailer? Which then comes with a whole lot of benefits. Like, for example, it can block a couple of bullets that are incoming or something. I don't know. What if you have a specific gear set that allowed the player to be the center of the support station? So you move around with the player and then the radius of the support station moves around with you. Obviously, these examples are sort of ridiculous. And again, probably wouldn't fit in a Division 1 in its current state. It would be either too weak or too strong, whatever. But these are just some examples of how you can get more creative with gear sets other than just adding more damage, more survivability, or more stats to the skills. Get more creative, find ways to sort of break the game, to surprise the player, to make something unique, because that is ultimately what makes an RPG or these looter type games really good. Like being able to build your character in ridiculous ways and then explore more and more of the game. And the added benefit of this, the added benefit of having more creative things on the gear sets is that these gear sets could be really, really good without adding raw bonuses to everything. If every gear set does something unique, adds utility to the player, give him something that is otherwise unheard of, you have players that can specialize into this one thing without one gear set or the other having the highest DPS and thus being a must-have per se every single time. Because if you're just adding raw stats to every gear set, then some gear sets are always going to be better than others because they add more raw stats without giving up on other things. That's why right now, Strikers, Nomads, and Predators are the most popular, because Strikers has the most raw damage, Nomad has the most raw survivability, and Predator is just like annoying as fuck. So that's that's kind of what my point is. Now, don't get me wrong, lots of gear can still come with additional stats here and there. That's what this game is about. That's what the RPG system is about. Should I go more damage? Should I go more survivability, more skill power? That's fine. Nothing wrong with that. But at the end game with the gear set, put some things in there that just surprise the player, that just sort of break the rules of the game to make some specialized and cool things, more than the Division 1 has ever done, so to speak. And that is pretty much what I hope to see in the Division 2. To sum it up, more interesting PvE with NPCs that do not just rely on big health pools and lots of damage. More strategic PvP where fights at range and cover actually matters a little bit. Skills and talents that give more control to the player. And then last up, I would also like some endgame gear that transforms the player's experience more than they would ever expect gear to do, rather than just giving them higher stats in one area or the other. Now, what I want to ask you guys is there anything that you think absolutely needs to be done with the Division 2? Do you disagree with me? Or do you agree with me? I don't always ask you to leave a comment because I feel like it's kind of cheesy, like, hey, leave a comment. I'm a YouTuber. I need clicks. I'm desperate for money. But I'm actually really curious this time. I want to know what you want to see most for the Division 2. It's actually something that I'm just curious, So let me know. And as always, I will see you guys later. Or like they say in the Netherlands, zie je later.